Batter up.
Rob and Chris, they're on the air. Yankees, Mets, they're everywhere. From the Bronx to Queens, the diamond gleams. MLB talk, the ultimate team. MLB is the place to be. Rob and Chris with the pitch you'll see. Swinging stats and stories fly. Baseball talk that's amplified.
And welcome to a new episode of NYMLB Talk with your hosts Rob and Chris as we cover the Mets, Yankees, and all of Major League Baseball. And if you're watching us on YouTube right now, hit that sub button. We would appreciate it. And also, if you want, you could follow us on Twitter and TikTok at NYMLB Talk. Rob at Armaraska, myself at CP7NY. Rob, we got a really great special guest today. Why don't you introduce him?
Yeah, I've been waiting for this for a while. Everybody remembers him as Eddie Munster, of course. Butch Patrick, which, this is great for me growing up basically in the 70s and watching the Munsters every weekday on WPIX in New York. This is great. And I was a Munsters over in Adams family, Chris. So Butch, thanks for coming on. How's everything going?
Everything is just great. What nice weather, made it home okay, getting ready for another road trip. I feel like a baseball player. Another road trip.
Yeah, before we get into the Munsters and everything, tell us about your road trips, because you told me you drive like 40,000 miles a year.
Wow.
Yeah, I definitely could qualify as a long-haul trucker. When I was doing the Munsters, George Barris supplied us with the Munster coach and Dragula. And growing up in the 50s and 60s, I was always a gearhead kind of a guy, motorbikes, mini bikes, motorcycles. And then the muscle car era was, when I turned 16, I got a Mach 1. So I've always had a love affair with cars. Well, when I acquired the Munster coach and the Dragula, a lot of times when I do personal appearances, I have a little bit of a niche where I work with hot rod communities. And the only way to get the cars there is to put them in the trailer and drag them. So I do a lot of driving.
That's great. Yeah, you told me like last week you did a couple of hundred miles, like 300-400 miles.
Well, tomorrow, Sunday, I'm leaving for Yuma, 1,500 miles with a stop in Oklahoma City, a stop in Amarillo, a stop in Phoenix, and then Yuma for 4 days, a car show. And then that's pretty much the farthest I've gone, 1,500 miles. I try to keep it under 1,000, but this one is they threw a large amount of money at me.
Well, then you gotta go for it.
You gotta go the extra 500 miles.
Definitely. So, all right, let's get into your career before we get into the baseball stuff. I checked it out, and your sister is actually the one who got you into acting. Is that true?
Yeah, it was. I lived in a town called Gardena, Southern California, down by the Beach District, Hermosa Redondo. We were definitely not a Hollywood family whatsoever, but my dad was kind of an influential guy. There was, in the old days down in the 50s and 60s in Gardena in Los Angeles, they had poker rooms, which was like the only place you could kind of go. And it's not really gambling if you're playing poker, but they looked like casinos in Vegas. So he owned a couple of those and was an influential guy. So when my little sister was born, a guy wanted to be mayor. And he thought a good way to get Dave's endorsement would be to put Michelle into the movies. So they arranged this photo shoot with this agent called Mary Grady and Amos Carr. And that particular day, I went along for the ride. And when he was done shooting Michelle's shots, he looked over at me and he goes, he's kind of got a look about him. And I specialize in, kids and guys in Hollywood. You mind if I take a picture? And so he took this photo with me with this goofy little hat on and my arms like this with a funny expression. And he put it in his window on Hollywood Boulevard. And about a month later, it's not quite like Lana Turner at Schwab's, but it's close. A producer and a director were walking by and they noticed the picture and they were still looking for the youngest son of this movie they were making starring Eddie Albert and Jane Wyatt. Brenda Lee played my older sister. Supri Sales was the comic relief cop. Miss Hathaway, Nancy Culp played my school teacher. So anyway, I went up for this interview with no experience, but I was outgoing and I wasn't intimidated by the process, and they wound up hiring me and giving me my first job. And after that happened, before the movie wrapped, I picked up a commercial for Kellogg's Corn Flakes. And before that was over, I had picked up this new series that was just starting up called General Hospital. So yeah. I was on the first month of General Hospital. So in Hollywood, you got a movie, you got a commercial, and you got a series, you're pretty much qualified to continue. And that's what I did.
Yeah, that movie, your film debut, that was called The Two Little Bears, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, Eddie Albert from Green Acres, and
Well,
yeah,
yeah, Green and Jane White from Father Knows Best.
yep.
And Brenda Lee was coming off rocking around the Christmas tree. So she was 15 years old and already a bona fide star. It's a cute little movie. It's a great family movie.
I probably have seen it, but I'd have to refresh it. All right, people, of course, we're getting questions about the Munsters. So real quick before we get into all that, one of our viewers, Dan, he's a great viewer. He just wants to know how you got along with the cast of the Munsters.
The Munsters was I didn't know it at the time, because you're a kid, you're in and out of school, but it was a really good set. And meaning it could have been very problematic because there was a lot of variables that most shows don't have to deal with: makeup, special effects, a lot of dirt, a lot of dust. But the cast was top notch, and I didn't know it at the time, but I used to tell people I never took an acting lesson, but literally people pointed out to me that working with Fred Gwynne and Al Lewis and Yvonne DiCarlo on a daily basis was acting lesson. You just didn't know it. They just happened to be your family on TV. And so it was wonderful. They were great. They all had kids about my age, and they treated me well, and I did my job, and I didn't make a lot of mistakes. And so that can get you, that's the biggest way you can get on the bad side of adult actors, if you keep screwing up.
Yeah. Well, and listen, you're right. Fred Gwynne, excellent actor. It sort of typecast for a while, but then as he got older, doing movies like My Cousin Vinny, which he was great in, of course. You had to learn a lot from him, and Grandpa Al Lewis. That set, it had to be fun for you as a kid to be on that set.
Well, it really was. And, one of the things with Fred, for instance, his play being so tall and me being so short, and, the show was produced by the Leave It to Beaver creators. And the Leave It to Beaver creators had really made the first hit sitcom that was done from the point of view of the children being the stars and their point of view on life, and the family, the adults being the supporting cast, so to speak. So they loved the idea that Herman was a giant, childlike Frankenstein, and Eddie was more of the adult, educated, kind of old for his age. So they would play a lot of father and son shows. They found out that I could handle dialogue, and that we had a good rapport with Fred, and we had good chemistry. So they wound up writing a lot of shows that featured Eddie and Herman, which was good for me. And Grandpa as well. So when the first Marilyn left the show, Beverly Owen, after 13 episodes, the first 13 were kind of about Marilyn finding love and bringing men home, and they're running away because they saw the family. And they kind of shifted gears when Pat Priest stepped in and featured more of the guys getting into mischief, and Herman and Herman going out into the world and dealing with stuff. But for me, it was great because he taught me a lot about during our father and son shows.
Yeah, what a great cast. And I just real quick want to say hello out there to former Mets manager Mickey Callaway. How you doing, Mickey? He's out there watching. Dr. Jay Thomas is out there. Thanks, guys, for stopping by. We really appreciate it. Butch, you also, I'm going to get back to the Munsters, but look, this hour always flies. Someone asked a question. They wanted to know about Lidsville. They just texted me. So before I forget about that too, how did you get involved with Sid and Marty Croft for Lidsville?
I'll give you a little bit of a backstory real quickly. I was 16 years old. I went to Brazil without a teacher and a parent to do a movie. The movie was a big hit. We got all these awards, and I was looking at billboards on Sunset, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be a movie star. But what happened was Hall Bartlett and Rhonda Fleming, who were married, who made the movie, got into this horrible Hollywood divorce, and the movie never was released because they were so pissed at each other that he didn't want her to make a penny. So I was very bummed out at Hollywood. I was very much unhappy. I was going to get out of the business, and then Marty Croft called me and asked me about Lidsville, and I said no. And he called me again. I said no. I don't want to do a Saturday morning show. I'm not interested. And I didn't even think about it. I just was very rigid on this. Well, finally, Sid called me, and Sid said, "Will you meet me for lunch?" Okay. So I went up, and he had a Corvette, and he was, a real macho guy. And, we hit it off, and we went and had lunch, and he convinced me that it would be a really good thing for me because, well, first thing he said, he goes, "We made Jack Wilde a star." I said, "Well, first of all, Sid, you didn't make Jack Wilde a star. He did Oliver, and he was nominated for an Academy Award. So Yeah, you did a good show, but you didn't make him a star. So don't sell me a bill of goods. but what happened was I really liked Sid, and I had worked with all the little people in Hollywood growing up because they were my stand-ins. So when you're a kid, they don't put another kid to stand in for another kid. They find little people, and I knew most of the people that were going to be on the show. So I said, well, this 11 weeks of work. Susan Calsill and the Calsills I went to high school with. They said, you never turn down work. What are you, an idiot? Most of your friends will be asleep on Saturday morning. They'll never see it. Don't worry about it. So that's how I wound up doing it. But what was really the kicker is I went into the office to see Marty, and I noticed a picture of the Bugaloos on the wall. And I saw Caroline Ellis, and she's really cute. And I said, does she ever come around? And he goes, oh, yeah, she's here all the time. She lives in London. She was never going to be around. He lied to me. So I agreed to do the show thinking I'd meet Caroline Ellis, which I never did.
You never did. But that's a great story. Chris, before I go on, because I know I'm talking a lot, do you have any follow-ups or anything you want to ask?
Butch, how was it as a child growing up, being on, this great hit TV show, and then also, being an actor on other sets and everything? Like, how was your childhood?
My childhood was pretty normal. I lived like almost an hour away from the studios. I had lots of other interests. I was never an actor. I was literally a kid that was good at memorization and wasn't intimidated. But early on, I knew that this money I was making would come in handy for a race car down the road. I mean, I was very analytical about it. I kind of thought acting was sort of like, I wasn't comfortable with the spotlight, and I wasn't comfortable with the amount of attention I was getting for something that I didn't really feel I was justified in getting. It was just, you walked into a studio and you did all this stuff, and then everybody thought you were like so cool and so great. But I actually had kind of like tried to remain, like unaware of it. And I just tried to be a regular guy, blending back into junior high school and stuff. And when I turned 16, the way I found the easiest way to do that would be to go with the guys at the gas station and work on cars and supply the case of beer or throw the parties. And I just wanted to be accepted as a regular guy. The movie thing was never something that I was really comfortable with.
Okay, now we have a question. I want to know: do you still have the giant baseball bat from the show? And if you,
I got two of them in the other room.
Okay. And if you do, can you lend
not
it
the
to
original? No, not the original. The original was Bolton, but the ones I have are like really wood.
Yeah. Okay, someone else, because I got a lot of questions this week. Someone else wanted to know how the process of your makeup was it long, especially since you were a kid and you had there were rules on set with school and everything. How long did it take for the makeup?
It's funny, this whole Munster thing was so unusual. Number one, I wasn't even the first choice. I had done a year of the Real McCoys, and I went back to live with my grandmother in Illinois when my mom married the baseball Ken Hunt, and they all moved to Washington D.C. for the Senators. So what happened was when I wound up getting the show, I flew back out to Los Angeles. Mike Westmore he was an apprentice at the time. Mike Westmore is a very famous makeup family, the Westmores. He was Bud's, who ran the department's nephew. Well, Mike didn't even have his card. He wasn't a card holding makeup man yet. So Bud assigned me to Mike and put us in his office behind closed doors in case anybody from the union came in. So Mike and I were laughing about it the other day because I did a documentary for him. I was in his documentary and I idolized him. He was young, he was handsome, he drove a Jaguar, it was really cool. But the funny part about it is it started off with me actually, we were breaking the law from the get-go. Yeah. Eddie was being made up by an apprentice. It took about an hour. The good news was Fred was 2 hours doing Herman. Everybody else was between an hour and 2 hours, but it was only 3 days a week. So, we had the weekend off, and then Monday and Tuesday were non-makeup reading and rehearsal days. So it wasn't too bad.
And you said there had to be a lot of dirt and on that set to make the Munster house look like the Munster house, right?
Yeah, it was the good kind of Hollywood dirt, not the kind that goes into books.
Yeah. That's great. Go ahead, Chris. Take a follow-up, of course.
No. I mean, and also working on the set with all the makeup, how was that experience? Because I'm sure, I'd grown up as a kid, I'm thinking that might be a little uncomfortable for you.
Well, the Universal Studios, in the 30s and 40s, they were the monster studio. They basically created the best monster movies. I was always a fan of those early 30s movies. We actually had some of the props from the 31 Frankenstein in Grandpa's Dungeon, some of the Jacob's ladders and some of the electronics. The interesting thing about Universal for me was the fact, because it was the Monster Studio, I really enjoyed the history of it. Next door to our soundstage was Stage 28, where they did the Phantom of the Opera. And that was the largest soundstage in the world at the time. So when I would sneak away, I would be able to go over there. And one thing you're not supposed to do is climb the ladders and go in the catwalks. And what's the first thing a kid does when you're told not to do it? You climb the ladder and go in the catwalks. Except they're 6 stories high instead of normally they're about 3 stories high. This place was huge. So that was my go-to explore place. But and when I did the Munsters book, my editor said, now what's your favorite Munster memory? And I said, the Munsters was my job and I enjoyed it. But my favorite memory was having free reign to go explore Universal Studios. I mean, how many kids, when you're a kid, you want to go explore a construction site? Well, that's great. Well, imagine you have sound stages being built. And you got 25 of them to go poke around in anytime you want. I mean, I had the best 2 years of my life doing the Munsters because I had a lot of free time occasionally to go poke around.
And that definitely had to be, Universal. Come on, you're right. What kid wouldn't love that? I would have.
It was amazing. It really was amazing. And then Mike Westmore would be up in the lab making, the stuff for other movies and making monster stuff. And my uncle supplied horses. We had 3 westerns to Wagon Train, the Virginian, and Laredo. So I would go visit him. And McHale's Navy was in production. So Ernest Borgnine was a dear friend, and Tim Conway was extremely funny. So I was really blessed.
Yeah, it sounds like a great and fun childhood. Someone else. Okay, I have more questions coming in. Beverly Owen or Pat Priest? Butch.
I had a huge crush on Beverly Owen. I mean, she was there first, and so I'm a little biased in that. Although I'm very dear friends with Pat, and Pat did a wonderful job, and she was great. But no, I had a huge crush on Beverly, and she actually, I like to say, she took me on my first date because she knew that I liked her. And she drove all the way down to pick me up in her little Volkswagen and drove all the way back to Grauman's Chinese Theater with me in tow for the premiere of Mary Poppins, which was a big to-do then. I mean, Mary Poppins for Disney, that was a huge, huge world premiere release. So she actually took me to Mary Poppins as my first date.
That's awesome.
I set the bar kind of high.
Yeah, really. You can't. Starting off that high, where are you going to go after that?
Yeah.
Did you ever feel like, because you had a lot of great guest stars as well, did you ever feel starstruck at all seeing any of them, or did you just get used to it after a while?
No, my mom would kind of nudge me and say, not on the Munsters, no, because they were actually sort of coming into our world, and I was respectful of them, and I enjoyed a lot of their work. John Carradine, he was in one of my favorite movies, and I remember him even as a kid. I loved The Grapes of Wrath, and so we had some good comedians in the early years of their comedy years. Paul Lynde comes to mind as Dr. Dudley because it was just funny. He was just a funny guy. But we had a lot of people that was great. Frank Gorshin and Don Rickles and Joyce Jameson. A lot of Louis Nye, Zombo was wonderful. But I would get a little starstruck by other people when I was doing other work, like Burt Lancaster or Judy Garland, or I remember Robert Young. I was a big fan of Father Knows Best. So I did the pilot for Marcus Welby the week that they landed on the moon, and he let us shut down production, and they put TVs all over the set, and he let everybody watch. It was really cool.
That's great. How was it working with Al Lewis? I met Al Lewis about 4 times at his restaurant in the Village when I was a DJ in the Village. So I met him a couple times. 232
Bleecker. Yeah, Grandpa's.
Yep.
Al, it was funny. I had a nice balance between all 3 of the main cast members, between Yvonne, Fred, and Al. Fred was Harvard, old school theater, not really method acting, but, very much, control. Yeah. Al was vaudeville, circus, over the top, cantankerous, loud, always on, big fan of round ball, NBA scout payrolls. So it was a good balance for me to be between the 2 of them. And then together, they were actually a very good comedy team. A lot of people, they were like underrated comedy team, but there's some scenes in there when they're working their bit together. They're as good as, Laurel and Hardy or Abbott and Costello, or a lot of them, Martin and Lewis. They did some very funny bits together.
Yeah, well, listen, the show was great. It only lasted 2 years, which is crazy, I think, because in syndication, it's been on forever. like I said, in New York, if you were a kid in New York in the 70s, it was on WPIX every afternoon, and I would watch it. When the show ended, how did you feel about that?
Well, I was happy myself because two things. I even as a 12-year-old kid noticed that the scripts weren't as funny in Monday morning reads. They were kind of stretching. But the good thing that happened about the 2-year thing, first of all, a lot of TV shows only ran 2 or 3 years in those days. There was a structure of 39 episodes was typical. We did that the first year. The second year, we only did 31 because of Fred's health. He was getting very thin and the suit and everything. So they scaled back to 31 episodes for a total of 70. But it was a transitional period of black and white to color. And the argument was who is going to pay for a third season of color if we go to color. So Batman was the only show that had come up against us that was beating us in the ratings. Up to that point, we had pretty much shut down 4 different shows that other networks had put up against us. But Batman in color and this transitional color thing was all the rage. So the network didn't want to pay for it and the producers didn't want to pay for it. So they came up with a kind of a solution that they would do a feature movie in color that they would then release to the world, which would set up a demand for the syndication package when it came about. So it's kind of a strategic business move. But to be honest with you, one factor that I think played more so into it than anything was Fred and Al were just homesick and they were ready to go back to New York.
Oh, yeah. Well, the movie was Munsters Go Home, which of course I remember, and it did set up the syndication pretty well because I mean, in syndication, your show was on.
And if I may interject, another thing is the Munsters would have not done well in color on TV. I'm glad it went off the air as a black and white package. The angles, the texture. I'm a big fan of the old Twilight Zone movies and series. And the Munsters, if you look at the way that they were shot like mini movies. They were done on film. They were done with the camera angles and lighting, like old monster movies from Universal, the classics, the lighting. And it was really a well-produced and expensive to do show, but it really the quality was very similar to the great movies that we all grew up and loved with. If it had gone to color, it would have just been, early color was not good anyway.
Right.
So I'm glad they shut it down in black and white. I think they didn't know it at the time, but I think it worked out well for everyone.
I agree 100%. Go ahead, Chris. You wanted to say
I was going to say, I was just going to say, I agree 100% that I think it should have stayed black and white. I think that added to it. Like you said, it added back to the old classic horror movies, that look to it. So I totally agree.
Well, in homage to the old movies, we had Uncle Gil visit us a couple times, the Creature of the Black Lagoon. Yeah. We had Uncle Lester, the Wolfman, visit us once or twice. So it was a great, it was really fun too, because literally you would never think that Frankenstein and Dracula and Vampira and those characters could be thought of as family members. But as soon as you see the Munsters, you never once think of them as monsters. You think of them as Herman and Lily and Grandpa. That's how well they did it. Is you never really thought about them other than a caring family unit that was believable, and you forgot all about the makeup really quick.
And anytime, talking about the color for a second, anytime they tried to do a reboot, I remember one with John Shook. I think
that was in the 80s. That was done by Sherwood Schwartz's son, Arthur Schwartz, and it ran 3 years. It was received well, but you always will have the reference to the original. It's like they've done 5 remakes of the movie. There's been 5 different movies since Munster Go Home done, and they all have been, you go to the well too often, but the point is the Munsters is a strong, sellable name and brand that they keep, Rob Zombie just did one a few years ago.
Yeah.
I was associated with it, and I actually thought it was entertaining. I didn't expect it to be anything, but I knew it wouldn't be the Munsters. I knew it wouldn't be, the Days of the Dead, not Days of the Dead, Three from Hell, or whatever the name of his movies are, 1,000 Corpses. But what I did enjoy about it was he was a fan, and he did it as a labor of love, and he addressed how Herman and Lily met, and that was important. I thought that was great that he covered the territory that Herman and Lily met and how they developed a trip to America, and they ended it when they were sitting on the couch and Grandpa goes, "What now? What do we do?"
That was pretty funny. We're going to get into your music because someone asked a question, but Chris, why don't you start it off and then I'll go to the question because
you started a band a little bit in the early 80s. How did that go? How did that start? And
Well, first things first, we went in 1972. Metro Media Records let go of Bobby Sherman, and I had just completed Lidsville, and a producer of Sugarloaf approached me about doing a music career like David Cassidy was doing at the time. He was the top dog. And I said, that's all fine and dandy. That would be great, except I don't sing. And he said, it doesn't matter. I said, well, it matters to me. And he goes, well, fix it in post, literally. So using a TV term. But he said, well, fix it in the mixer board. So a month later, I signed a contract for Metro Media Records. I'm on American Bandstand, actually headlining over Loggins and Messina, a really good group. Yeah. And I'm out there lip singing my little heart away. We went on the tour for about 6 months. Had a great time, spent a ton of Metro Media's money, played Rockstar, and they finally wrapped it up and said, we're getting out of the record business. So as my tongue-in-cheek joke is, I not only didn't do very well, I put a major corporation out of the music business. That's how much money we spent.
That's great. All right, here's a question.
But to your 80s thing, what happened was that when MTV came on the air, I wanted to be a VJ. Well, those jobs were taken. So then a friend of mine was a musician and a producer. We decided to do rock videos. We thought producing rock videos would be all the rage. So I wrote the lyrics to Whatever Happened to Eddie. And this was the first time I had addressed being Eddie Munster in about 18 years. So we made a video, and we didn't have an appointment with MTV. We went to New York, and we bullshitted our way up the tower. And they wound up playing it on Super Bowl Sunday, and we didn't have a record deal. And it was a big to-do because back in that time, it was all a pay-to-play situation. It was all payola. You had to pay to get on the radio. You had to pay to get on MTV. They put it on, and they formed the basement tapes from the idea that maybe there's more bands out there that have music and they have their home videos that they've created without a record deal. So I like to think I might have helped some people achieve their dream.
Yeah, sure. With the basement tapes, definitely.
But but in closing, I was the original Munster Manili.
Okay, with the limp singing,
way ahead of time. And for Whatever Happened to Eddie, I faked the bass too.
That's great. One of our viewers wants to know it says what music did Butch crank back in the 60s and 70s? So want to know what you were into.
My first concert was Jimi Hendrix.
Wow.
Started at the top there. That's another top. Marilyn Munster is the first date, and Jimi Hendrix is the first concert. But I was a big Led Zeppelin fan. Always been a Beatle fan, of course. Yeah. But for the obscure bands of the time, 10 years after, I'm a huge Alice Cooper fan to this day. I remember seeing Alice Cooper when I was like 18, and he was pretty much unknown at the time. He just was starting, and the show he put on, it was like, you ain't gonna believe what this guy does. Oh my God. Through the years, I like, in the 80s when everything was happening, I liked Devo a lot. I was a big Devo fan. But over the years, I'm pretty much classic rock, Who, Zepp, Stones, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, excellent. All right, this is a baseball show, so we got to talk a little baseball, Chris.
Yeah.
So, all right, you want to start it off?
Okay, baseball. John. Center field.
Good. Yeah.
That's a good way to.
I can bridge that.
There you go. That's how we segue into baseball.
Yeah, that's a good segue. All right, so we want to talk about your stepfather, Ken Hunt. He actually was an original California Angel. He played in their first game ever, right? He also played.
He was an original Yankee.
Oh, and originally he started with the Yankees, but then he went to the Angels. And he played in the first ever opening day. He was in the starting lineup for the Angels, so that's what I actually met.
He went to the Angels in the expansion. Him and Eli Gerba and a couple other back in the when in the expansion, the players can only protect like 20 people or something. So I think he was the second guy picked after Jim Fregosi. But Kenny was a great outfielder with a huge arm. He was a great defensive fielder. He struck out a lot, but he had a lot of power when he finally connected. So they were working on the strike zone, and his rookie year with the Angels was a very good rookie year. 24 homers, 84 RBIs, or 26 homers and 84 RBIs. I can't remember, one of the two. But his fielding was amazing. He had like a Bo Jackson arm. He could fire like a line drive from the warning track, spot on, on the fly. So what happened was he had a problem with his throwing arm, and it wasn't addressed properly. and he went to the plate to do a Rocky Calavito bat roll, back behind your back, and his shoulder dropped down to his waist. So during a game, he dislocated his shoulder, put him out for a year. When he came back, Bill Rigney was managing the team. He didn't like Kenny, and Kenny didn't care for him, and that caused for a problem right there. And they traded him to the Washington Senators.
Yeah, he did he have an aneurysm in his throwing arm also, and that caused some problems?
I'm not familiar with that.
That's what I checked. And he had surgery to repair it, but
he just never recovered. They tried to move him to first base because of the throwing factor to kind of make it a little easier on his arm. It didn't work well for him, and he wound up kicking around with it. The Senators, actually, for being a last place team, the Senators had a lot of talent.
Yeah,
they had Gil Hodges managing them. They had Don Zimmer at third. They had Claude Osteen on the mound. They had Eddie Kirkpatrick was Don Blasingame at second. Ed Kirkpatrick was the catcher. Frank Howard.
Yep, Frank Howard.
Yeah, I mean, so it was, even though it was a last place team, he used to tell me, he goes, I'm in the show, and that's all that counts. He was just happy to be there. And it was fun for me because even though while I was doing the Munsters out in California, my whole family moved back to DC. I would go back and forth about maybe once a month to go visit them and then go back to work. So I was a busy guy.
Now Ken was in an episode, which I love that episode, of the Munsters. Why don't you tell us about that one?
Yeah, Fred and Al liked Kenny. Kenny was very likable. He was a handsome guy. Everybody liked him. He was always a funny guy. So Fred and Al knew that he was a baseball player. So there happened to be an episode, Herman the Rookie, where baseball players they're there. So they went to the producers and got Kenny to get a speaking part as the catcher when Herman goes to throw the ball home, and after he's thrown it through everybody's hurt by his overpowering strength. He throws the mask off. He goes, no, not me, Leo. Leo DeRocher was also the guest as the manager of the Dodgers. And he goes, I'm going back to the minors. And the funny thing about that was Leo DeRocher was actually the manager of the Cubs at the time. And they traded him to the Cubs. And the Cubs sent him to Tacoma, the AAA ball. And that's when Kenny quit.
He also tell us who your brother's godfather was. That's what I had to ask you.
Moose Scourin. Bill Scourin, Moose. Wow. And I wasn't really familiar how good Moose Scourin was.
Yeah.
I looked him up. He actually has some records. He was really good.
Yeah, he was a great Yankee. And your stepfather actually played for the Yankees in 1960, which was the year. It was the year of heartbreak for the Yankees, Chris.
Oh yeah, he was. They had him as Mickey Mantle's roommate when they would go on the road, kind of like grooming him.
That's great.
To be center fielder. The thing back in the day was, a lot of people probably do know this, but in the old days, the ball players, they were quite the partiers. They went out and had a good time. They were like a frat house boys. And Mickey would lead the charge. And Roger Maris and Kenny both came from North Dakota. They actually were buried next to each other in Fargo.
Yeah.
And when I finally made it to Yankee Stadium a few years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I walked in and I said, looking around at the house that Ruth built, this is the old Yankee Stadium, And I said, this must have been an amazing thing for Ken and Roger to be from, local, small town, North Dakota farm boys to walk in to New York City and play in that arena. I mean, I can't imagine how important it must have been to them.
Yeah, Chris. Well, Chris, Monument Park alone, right, Chris?
Oh yeah. I mean, Yankee Stadium is like a museum. Even the new Yankee Stadium, it doesn't have we always talk about it, but
right.
It just doesn't have the same aura as the old Yankee Stadium because those players, didn't play in the new one.
I always felt sorry for Kenny because he had potential. He could have been a big. He was destined for greatness, but an injury took it away from him. And I always felt bad for him because, life is tough and sometimes, and he didn't have the personality. He had a great personality, but he didn't have the managerial coaching stuff. That's what he probably should have gotten into that, but he chose not to. But he was always a great guy. Everybody loved him. I mean, he was one of the nicest, most likable guys you'd ever want to meet. And like a lot of ball players, a businessman wanted to have a jock, in his business and hired him, and Kenny did fine, and he opened a bar, and it was he did well, and he had a great life. But I always felt kind of bad that he had talent that never really saw his full potential.
Yeah, well, that one year with the Angels, like you said, he hit 25 home runs. I think he had 84 RBIs.
It's a good rookie season.
Yeah, that was great. And it is a shame. I mean, we hear those stories all the time.
Yeah.
Injuries kill careers, but it must have been as a kid. I mean, what an amazing childhood you had. You're on the Munsters, you're meeting everybody, and then your stepfather is a major league ball player.
Well,
I mean,
another funny thing is ball players are just big kids anyway. And when I would go, there was a rule, I could only go in the clubhouse if they won. So on the Senators, that didn't happen that often.
Yeah.
But when I would go early, my favorite thing to do is go to the park early and get in the stands and shag flies and get to know the grounds crew and get to know everybody. And everybody liked the Munsters. So the visiting teams, the Tigers had come in and Al Kaline and it was like all these people were giving me autographed baseballs and Kenny. I always had regular Major League baseballs at home to play with. It was wonderful, and I had a Mickey Mantle glove. I had a Leon Wagner kangaroo skin glove when he was with the Angels, and it was just great. I guess I really didn't appreciate it as much as I should have, but I did have a wonderful, wonderful childhood. I've had a wonderful life. The childhood was a great part of it, but I wouldn't have traded my childhood for anybody's, really. I mean, it was top notch.
Yeah, who could blame you? Go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. Well, all right. So now you're growing up as a Dodger fan. You go out to Senators. You had a connection to the Angels as well.
Yeah.
So all these teams, but who was like your favorite players growing up?
Well, a pitcher, Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale, there was, the pair of them. Probably, I was a Mickey Mantle fan, but in the National League, it was tough to Bob Gibson if you're talking pitchers and stuff. But I always enjoyed. I was a Harmon Killebrew fan. I thought he was really good. Hank Aaron, I actually was lucky enough before Hank passed, we were doing an autograph signing together, and he and I rode in the limo for about an hour and a half and had a chance to chat and talk. And I mean, he wasn't feeling that well, so I wound up and got him some soup and brought it to him and this and that. And he was really a nice guy, but he told me some great stories about him and Roger Clemens.
That's
they
great.
did not like each other.
Wow.
Clemens didn't get along with everybody.
I know. That was a cool car ride to sit and talk with Hank one-on-one for a while.
But when you went to when you were a kid and you went to a Dodger game, and here it is, people are going to say, they're not going to say Butch Patrick's here. They're going to say Eddie Munster is at the game today. How did kids try to flock you and get your autograph?
No, I was very lucky because nobody recognized me. And when I took my makeup off, I could wander around, do what I wanted to do, and that was great. Now, if I wanted to be known, I could mention it, and people didn't say, "Oh, now I see it." But if you didn't want to be known, it was very easy to just blend in with the crowd and watch the game, which is really what I did normally. I only had one father and son game. It's the picture that you put up, which was fun, and that was in D.C. The most fun I probably had at baseball was spring training with the Angels, because we could make it. My mom would get in the car on the first pitch in Los Angeles, and we would make it the 112 miles to the Polo Grounds. My mom drove fast. We would get there usually by the 7th inning. So we'd listen to the game while she was driving, and then we had to get to the Polo Grounds in the 7th inning, and it was really fun. Spring training was a lot of fun. Kenny was quite the prankster. You may have heard the stories about all the bicycles that Gene Autry made him ride during spring training, all wound up in the deep end of the pool one night. And, that was Kenny's doing. Him and Joe Coppy used to come to the house a lot, Jim Fergosi. That was the best time, was the Angels, when he was with the Angels before he got traded. That was really good stuff.
And he had that great year. So
Lee Thomas. Yeah, there's a few guys. Billy Moran, Albie Pearson. Good stuff.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. Well, what about now? Are you a baseball fan now, or?
I am. I mean, I enjoy the game very much. One of my favorite movies is Field of Dreams and this and that. But what happened with baseball to me, what frustrates me, It's just got so expensive that the average guy can't take his kids to the ballpark. It's crazy, and it hurts what I do a lot of AAA, AA, single A promotions and marketing, and because the Munsters was from the '60s, and we'll promote like a throwback day. I remember I did one for the Altoona Curve, which is a AAA, I think Pirates. I think it was a AAA Pirates team, and all the baseball players, when they put them up in the jumbotron, they all had Eddie Munster widow speaks. And I took the Munster coach, I drove it around the track, on the morning track. But it's kind of sad that it's gotten so pricey. The pricing has gotten out of control, and I don't begrudge anybody. It is what it is. But in the free agency, they deserve to get, it was right for them to be able to control their own destinies and not be owned like the old Hollywood studios used to own the actors and stuff.
Right.
But when it got so expensive, when Kenny played, all the players had second jobs in the off season. They weren't making these hundreds of millions of dollars or millions of dollars. They were making, I think Mickey Mantle was the first guy to crack 100,000 in the early 60s, which was a huge contract back then. So that's the only thing that frustrates me with baseball, is it just got so darn expensive that it just kind of soured it for me a little bit. I still enjoy the game. I still enjoy the stadiums, and I love the idea with the kids and the autographs, and it's still magic.
Yeah, that's great. Chris, you got that picture of Butch with Joe Madden that he sent me?
You know what that happened? I was at St. Louis. A friend of mine was a sports writer, Calvin May. And he was getting an autographed picture for the manager of the Cardinals, and they were playing the Cubs. So I got one for Joe Madden, and he told me to come to Wrigley Field, and I did. And he told me this is the year after they won the World Series. He had that picture on his desk, and he said like he took it with him on the. He might have been lying to me, but he told me it was his good luck charm.
That's a great picture.
But it wasn't on his desk. It wasn't on the wall in some obscure spot.
Yeah, that's great.
Nice guy. Wonderful manager, really nice man.
Definitely. Go ahead, Chris.
No. So were you a Cubs fan at all too, to add to it, or no?
Yeah, I like the Cubs. I've always been a Cub fan. Yeah, back in the day, when they had Ron Santo and Billy Williams and Ernie Banks, Mr. Cub, I was a huge Cubs fan. I like Chicago. I have a lot of friends in Chicago. I like the Chicago sports teams. The Cubs, I was so happy when they finally won the World Championship, thank God. And the way they won it. And you talk about enjoying, loving baseball. The last World Series, the Dodgers, obviously, when they won it, but you talk about a game of inches. Yeah. I think that particular series couldn't have shown how interesting the game can be between the long fly balls and pushing the guy off and the throw home from second base. I mean, literally, this is like milliseconds changing the history of the World Series. And that's the kind of stuff I used to think about. When whoever laid this game out, you literally hit the ball. As long as it's a clean play, you're going to be out. And if there's one bobble, you're safe.
Right.
It's just amazing how they came up with the dimensions of everything.
It is. It's still in its purest form. Baseball.
Yeah,
it's still great.
The stealing second thing, and no matter what, it's still a bang thing. It's a split second.
Yes, definitely. What do you think of Ohtani? Do you have any opinions of Ohtani?
It's amazing. It's amazing that one guy. When you think of thousands and thousands, millions of people play the game, he's something special. He's a real deal, and I like his attitude. I like him as a person. I like the nature of the Asian people are humble to begin with, and I think he's wonderful. Nothing but good things to say about him.
That's good. Good, Chris. Go ahead. You want to say something?
Yeah. No. Anybody else you follow now? Currently for baseball? Any other favorite players?
My brother Chris, my two younger brothers, Kenny's kids, are huge baseball fans, and Chris knows everything about it. He's actually won a couple national championships for men's Class C softball, and he is if I ever have any questions, I ask him, but I don't really follow the game that closely. I'm sorry, I don't.
That's all right.
I used to. Maybe I just grew out of it. But I like all things at playoff time. I come around for the March Madness, for basketball, and I come around for the playoffs. And I was a little upset off of the NFL a few years ago, but I've gotten over it. So
Getting back to acting quick, like obviously the Munsters comes to mind first, but any other favorite actors that you worked with, male, female?
Sure. I was lucky enough. People have asked me, like, what's, got 3 or 4, people that you were like most impressed with meeting. I did a lot of Disney work. Well, not a lot. I did a few years of Disney work, but I met Walt, and I was really impressed with him. Magic. Because I went to Disneyland when it was, when I was 3 years old when it opened. So I was going there as a kid. I was a big fan of Twilight Zone. So when I was doing the Lidsville out at Paramount, Rod Serling was out there doing Night Gallery. And I met him, and he scared the hell out of me because just meeting him briefly, I sensed that he was from another dimension and he knew things. And because I wondered, how could anybody think up all these great shows? This is like weird stuff. Well, I met the guy, and then I saw clearly that he has some kind of knowledge that we're not privy to. And then Evel Knievel. I did commercials with Evel Knievel and Jimmy Walker for Little Caesars about 20 some odd years ago. And I was living in Florida, and Evel lived in Florida, and we became friends. And I never met Muhammad Ali, but when I was a kid riding my bike around on my dirt bikes and my, this and that, Evel Knievel was a god to everybody, every kid. And to physically get to know him and see how people would respond to him, I was very blessed to have been his friend.
So what are you up to now, Butch? Let's plug some of the things that you're doing now.
Well, like I said, I was a car guy, and when Comic-Con started developing 30 some odd years ago, the Munsters were offered, they contacted me, and I contacted Al Lewis, and I contacted them. We contacted Pat Priest. So we started reconnecting and going out and seeing this fan base that was so, big and growing. And so everybody started nostalgia shows and reruns, and all these shows started drawing attention. And what I did, George Barris, who created the Munster Coach and the Dragula, was a good friend of mine. And I asked him, do you mind if I build my own coach in Dragula and go out? And he goes, absolutely, Butch, be my guest. Just don't pass it off as a Barris build. Don't put a Barris badge on it. I go, I would never do that. I go, I'm just inspired by you. And so anyway, I have a good relationship with the Barris family. So what I wanted to do was, I like racetracks and Daytona and Indy racing and this and that. So I found a way to kind of go out on the road with my cars as a marketing tool to work with businesses to draw attention to their products or their dealerships or their racetracks or their drag strips. And it's a win-win. So I get to hang around gearheads and race car drivers. They're fans of the Munsters. The show's done well in rerun. It's family friendly, and everybody's happy. I go do what I want to do. Smiling faces come to the table. We interact, and I get paid to do it.
And what about the autograph shows?
The autograph shows I do. The problem with the autograph shows is they usually don't have enough space for the cars and stuff unless I put them in the lobby. And the autograph shows have sort of morphed into something a little bit more towards William Shatner's and the A-list people that never used to do it now do it. And the voiceover people do a lot of it now. There's so much content out there for streaming services that the Munsters isn't quite as strong as I still do some, but I have my own deal right now. I'm May 8th. We'll be opening my own haunted attraction at Indiana Beach Amusement Park. My partner and I, Tom Devlin, is a master monster maker and filmmaker that we became friends. So I said, we need to make a mobile version of your museum that he's got in Boulder City, Nevada. So we're doing that. We're going to, instead of it being mobile, we're going to plop it down at this amusement park. The first week of, there's a new TV show coming out on CW called the Mother Road Route 66 100th Anniversary Road Rally. And they've got 10 celebrities driving 10 cars. We're going to drive from Chicago to Vegas the first week of May. And then after that, we stop, and then we come back to Vegas and finish it off in July. So I'm really excited about that because it allows me to do all the Route 66 stuff that I already have done and get paid to drive a cool car. And that'll be fun. And hopefully we'll take that on the road. And then the TV show that's being shopped right now is called Haunt Improvement, much like Home Improvement. But what we do is we go to privately owned haunted houses around the country, which is very Munster-like. And in October, you'll see these all over the people open up haunts and stuff. And we go in and we tell them how to improve their haunt. And I help them market and get media exposure. And I'm excited about that. So those are my 3 things that's happening right now.
Yeah, Butch, when it gets closer to the time, email me that stuff or send me that stuff so that we could plug you on upcoming shows.
Oh, I'll be happy to. I thought we said closer to the time. I was like, what? I'm going to be buried in my Dragula?
That's good.
What channel is it going to be on, that show?
CW.
Oh,
Okay,
nice.
so 11 CW here in New York. That's 11 CW. Chris, you want to ask Butch the question anyway, even though he doesn't follow baseball a lot. Maybe he has some ideas that could change it, right?
Okay, all right, Butch. We always ask this question for our guests at the end.
Okay.
If you were named MLB commissioner today, what changes would you make to the game?
This is not for today, but I had a very good solution on salaries a long time ago. And my solution was everybody gets $1 million a year at the beginning of the season. That's their flat rate. And at the end of the season, you have a calculated bonus program and a bonus graph to where, depending on how you did that year, you then get bonuses beyond that. That way, if you get a $50 million contract, you break your leg, and you're like, there's baseball teams paying off. Bobby Bonilla comes to mind.
Yeah,
there are teams paying off salaries that if you tell me if you're coming out of high school or college back in the day, you wouldn't accept $1 million plus perks if you have a good year. Everybody would accept that because there would be a fair playing field, and if you did really well, you'd make millions more, and it would keep it affordable for the fans.
Yeah, but the players' union would never go for that.
No, I would have. Okay, Pete Rose should have been in the Hall of Fame while he was alive. I knew Pete well. He was a nice guy. Yeah, he never bet against his team. And this day and age, with everybody and their mother betting, come on, give me a break.
Right.
Yeah. Well, like me and Chris always talk about, baseball now is sponsored. DraftKings, the pregame, the postgame, sponsored by DraftKings, and it's sort of hypocritical.
Yeah.
And you're right. I feel Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. And in the beginning, I didn't. I changed my mind. But when he was alive, well, now what good is it really?
Anyway, that was one. The only thing that I don't know, it is what it is, but thank God is Roger Goodell's not running the show.
That's good.
You know what? You don't have to run NFL anymore. You can put anything out there, and people are going to watch the NFL.
God, it's so frustrating. I tell people, I go, I'm not ragging on anybody, but man, I'm so happy I grew up when I grew up, because the kids today, you don't want to beat them up over it because they don't know any better. It wasn't their fault. They didn't do it. But man, am I happy I was born in 1953 and I'll be dead in 20 years.
Let's not even think about that.
I'm okay with it. Believe me, I've got a great window. I'm good with it.
we have a couple more minutes. I wanted to bring up when I was a kid, everybody wanted the Woof Woof doll, right? Is that what it was called?
Yeah. Do you want me to get up and show you something?
If you want, we got time.
Can I take my little? Hold on. All right. Let's just go by the Beetle wall here.
That's great too.
And then we go into the game room.
That's great.
There's 3 of them.
There they are. Oh, that's
4 of them. And then in case you don't have any Munster collectibles, they're all over here.
That's great. That's great that you have that room. It really is. Oh man, awesome. That's a great room.
Oh, the baseball bat. There you go.
This is one of our listeners,
there
Joe Dell. There it is. It's not the original, but it looks like the one that you swung.
It's a Butch Eddie Patrick Lilyville Slugger spot tempered.
That's great. Thanks for showing us that stuff. We really appreciate it.
And you play it in the majors with it.
And then as I showed you guys earlier, my
13.
Eddie 13 for my Philly when I went to the Phillies with the Fanatic. Ugh.
So what happened with the Fanatic? Did you ride around?
Dodgers. They were playing the Dodgers, and they had a little fan appreciation thing where they were calling Friday the 13th, and they had me come out of the stands and chase Jason away.
That's great. Couple of real quick things. Do you feel at any point did you feel like you were typecast, Butch?
No, and a lot of people ask me that, but they forget the fact that I was under makeup. So if you take your makeup off and you go out and do something else, you're not typecast. Now, had I been showing up in shorts carrying Woof Woof, that would have been an issue. But luckily, kids grow a lot. Every 2 years, you'd have new pictures taken. Your voice would change. You get taller. So as a kid, you probably really don't get typecast because you are transitioning all the time. Now, once you reach an adult, like Fred Gwynn, he got typecast. Now, Grandpa, Al Lewis, he looked like Grandpa with or without the makeup.
That's right. He did. But for him, it didn't even matter, right?
No. And did you know who owned Grandpa's restaurant?
Yeah, it wasn't. I know he didn't own it. I can't remember, but
Gotti.
That's right. I knew Grandpa didn't own it. That's right.
Grandpa was connected.
Yeah, he was connected. But it was great. Listen, I told you I was there about 4 or 5 times, and he was there every time I was there, greeting everybody.
I used to call up to get a reservation, and Mikey and Tony, hey, Butch, you don't call Al. He doesn't really understand what's going on. You talk to me, I'll get you a table. That's
definitely great. But all right, Butch, I just want to thank you so much for coming on. This was a thrill for me. It was just great. I really appreciate it. And like I said, anything you need plugged, get in touch with me. We'll plug it. We got a pretty good audience out there.
Have your audience, just let them know that in case they want to contact me or track me down, Munsters.com is a very easy way to do it. Leads to everything, Munsters, and Facebook and this and that, whatever. But Munsters.com will get you started.
Okay, that's great. I got a couple quick things before we go. Sure. Monday, we're not on tonight. We're on now. So tonight we are not on at 9 p.m. But we'll be back Monday at 9 p.m., not 3 p.m. Everything's switched up. Madison from the Generational Run podcast is back to talk Yankee baseball. So her and Chris could bust my chops on Monday night. Everybody loves Madison. She's great, so you don't want to miss it. Friday, March 13th at 9 p.m., we have former Yankee Chief Gene Locklear and Dr. Jay Thomas come on to talk about Chief's book, The 3 Lives of Gene Locklear, which I just finished, and it's great. And former Mets manager Mickey Callaway, who is out there today, will be back. I have to talk to Mickey this weekend, and we'll give you a date on that. So everybody, we appreciate it. The audience was really huge today. And Butch, thanks once again.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you.
Yeah,
all right.
Again, Butch. Here's the website if anybody wants to take a quick look before we go. Like Butch said, Munsters.com. Very easy to get to. Check it out. Everything's on there.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have
a good weekend.